We aren't woke, we're broke. That's the brutal reality behind the headlines accusing Gen Z of being too selfish to have kids. But how are you supposed to start a family when childcare costs more than rent in all 50 states? And the average homeowner age has hit 40, a milestone not a single Gen Zer has even reached. The American dream didn't just stall, it was systematically dismantled. And the most terrifying part isn't the empty nurseries. It's the shadow crisis in the labor market that's making sure you never get your foot in the door. We're talking about a world where the average new hire is 42 years old and entry-level roles have effectively been deleted by AI or outsourced into the shadows. This isn't just a tough market, it's a total blockage of the societal pipeline. When the very people meant to build the future are being treated as a high-risk liability before they even start, we aren't just facing a quiet house. We're facing a national standstill. If the path to basic stability is gated behind a wall of experience that no longer exists for the young, then the stakes aren't just your bank account. It's the survival of the social contract itself. And while the world watches this pipeline rust, the mainstream narrative keeps insisting this is all just a lifestyle choice. You've seen the headlines. They tell us Gen Z would rather blow their savings on a European summer or a digital nomad setup than on a mortgage and a nursery. It's framed as a cultural pivot, a generation so obsessed with individualism and climate anxiety that they've simply opted out of the traditional family unit. On the surface, it looks like a conscious decision to prioritize personal freedom over parenthood. But once you look past the dink aesthetic and start crunching the numbers, you realize this freedom is actually a forced retreat. But here's the quiet part. They aren't saying out loud. The choice to not have kids isn't a choice at all. It's a survival reflex. For most of human history, children were your economic engine, the literal hands that kept the household running. Today, they've been reclassified as the ultimate financial liability. And while you're being gaslit into thinking you're just too woke to parent, the labor market is quietly pulling the ladder up behind it. Look at the data. When the average age of a new hire hits 42, it's not just a tough market. It's a systematic purge. You aren't opting out of the American dream. You're being evicted from it before you even get a chance to clock in. The system didn't just break, it inverted, turning the very foundation of human society into a luxury item no one can afford to buy. But here's the twist that should keep you up at night. While you're being told there's no room for you in the workforce, a shadow economy is already filling your seat. We've hit a grotesque paradox where entry-level roles for graduates are non-existent, yet child labor violations have spiked by nearly 90%. The system isn't just broken, it's reverting to pre-industrial factory settings. The same corporate gatekeepers who label you too risky to hire are quietly replacing the dream of the middle-class family with a combination of AI and the most vulnerable members of society. You aren't being asked to wait for a better economy. You're being systematically phased out of it. This isn't a transition. It's a liquidation of the next generation's future. And the selfishness narrative is just the smokescreen they use to keep you from noticing the replacement. The standard response to this crisis is a classic dose of generational gaslighting. Just work harder. The experts on cable news tell you to get a STEM degree, move to a cheaper city, and grind out a side hustle until the math finally adds up. They want you to believe that the traditional path, education, stability, then family, is still open if you just exhibit enough grit. But here is the fatal flaw in that logic. You can't out-hustle a system that is fundamentally designed to extract your value while locking you out of ownership. While the old guard tells you to pay your dues in entry-level roles, the market has effectively deleted the first rung of the ladder. Following the common sense advice of 1995 in this economy isn't a strategy. It's a trap. They're giving you a roadmap to a city that's already been burned down, and then they have the nerve to call you lazy for refusing to move into the ruins. This isn't just a market failure. It's a strategic pivot. The core secret no one wants to say out loud is that the modern economic engine has evolved beyond the need for a domestic workforce. For a century, the social contract was simple. The system invested in you because it needed your children to fill the factories and buy the products. But today, between generative AI and the hyper-efficient extraction of global labor, your potential offspring have been rebranded as unnecessary overhead. The system is now optimized to milk you for every cent of rent and interest in the here and now, rather than investing in a future that requires 20 years of expensive upbringing. You're being gaslit into feeling guilty about a birth rate collapse, while the very architects of this economy are quietly building a world where family is a luxury subscription service reserved for the top 1%. They don't want you to leave a legacy. They want you to remain a high-output, low-maintenance unit of debt until the day you're replaced by a line of code. The unfair advantage isn't yours. It belongs to a system that has realized it can profit more from your extinction than your evolution. But here's the final, brutal trap. The one that makes all your individual stat maxing feel like running on a treadmill in a burning building. You're told to wait, to grind, to get your personal empire in order first. But while you're busy trying to outrun inflation and outcompete algorithms, you're up against the one thing even the most super rich Gen Zer can't hack: the biological clock. We are witnessing a head-on collision between an economy that demands 20 more years of hustle and a human body that wasn't designed to wait until middle age to start a legacy. By the time the system finally deems you financially stable, the window is already slamming shut. You've been tricked into trading your peak vitality for the chance to pay off a debt for a degree that's being replaced by a chatbot. And the terrifying part? Even if you beat the odds, even if you become that 1 in a million success story who can afford the $3,000 a month survival tax, you still have to look at the world you're bringing that child into. A world where the referees have already decided the game is over and they're just waiting for the stadium lights to go out. Because let's be real, what happens when the generation that was told they were unnecessary finally decides to stop playing the game altogether? That's the silent strike happening in real time. When you stop playing a rigged game, the board loses its power. We aren't opting out of life. We are opting out of a debt-fueled hallucination that requires us to sacrifice our sanity for a stability that never arrives. When the headlines call you selfish for refusing to bring a child into a world where childcare is a luxury and a home is a 40-year fantasy, they are terrified because they've lost their leverage. The ultimate act of parental mercy in this economy is refusing to create a new generation of debt slaves for a machine that has already replaced their future with a line of code. This birth rate collapse isn't a sign of Gen Z's weakness. It's the definitive proof that the social contract is null and void. The woke label was always just a smokescreen to hide the fact that the bank accounts were empty and the ladder had been burned for firewood. We are the first generation to realize that if the price of entry into the middle class is your soul and your peak vitality, then the cost is simply too high. The stadium lights aren't just going out. The crowd has already left the building. And in that silence, the enlightenment finally hits. The system was never designed to sustain you. It was designed to consume you. By refusing to provide the next generation of fuel for a broken machine, you haven't failed. You've simply taken back the only power the architects of this economy can't take by force: the power to refuse a future that was never meant for you. So, let the headlines keep spinning. Let the pundits call it a demographic winter or a crisis of character. To us, it's just the first time we've seen the world for what it actually is. We aren't a generation in decline. We are a generation in revolt. One that has traded a plastic promise of someday for the brutal honesty of not today. We aren't waiting for the referees to fix the rules because we've finally realized that the game itself is the problem. This silence you hear isn't the sound of a generation giving up. It's the sound of the leverage shifting. We are choosing to be the last link in a chain of exploitation rather than the first chapter of a new disaster. If you're ready to stop apologizing for surviving a system you didn't build, hit the subscribe button. We're done living by their script. It's time we started writing our own.